What we're looking at is a very, very important ancestor and plant to my indigenous people. Blue corn is a really beautiful and sacred corn. And also why it's so important to me is my indigenous name is blue corn. It's something that makes up our diet and our life cycle throughout the year. So if we look at the history of indigenous peoples and colonialism, especially peoples who were moved across great areas, they no longer have these food, which isn't just changing their diet, but it's their cultural celebrations, maybe even their names, their stories, their histories get erased when you also disconnect them. Indigenizing a museum is about incorporating different knowledge systems. So in indigenous ways of knowing, we learned as humans from animal people and plant people about how we can be in the world.
I just find it extraordinary that I planted that from a seed, a corn seed, and then you get these amazing things grow. I think that process just really it just astounds me. So this space I call my urban potager. I grew up with this sense that a garden is supposed to be a kind of private space, that it's supposed to be something that you cultivate for yourself and your family, whereas actually this has become a very public space for me. I try and get out here every day in a different way. If I feel frustrated or if I feel upset about things that are going on in the world, and particularly things around climate change just feel completely out of control for everybody at the moment, I think I do have a way of nurturing a little patch of land and trying to do the best in that space. I think gardens can be really exciting experimental spaces. They can be spaces where you can share information, ideas, literally sharing seeds and plants. And you can feel like you're in that process together on a street rather than, doing it alone.
I have to say, I do quite like this one, which is a big cereus cactus, so kind of like a night flowering cactus they planted here maybe about 100 years ago or something, we reckon. It's quite an old plant. We tend to think about houseplants as being plants that live in houses, but of course they're not. They're plants which have whole other lives in a jungle or a desert or something like that, and we've just wanted to be able to grow them in places we shouldn't be able to grow them, and so we've brought them indoors. And so looking at something like this can remind you that actually if you've got a rubber tree on your window ledge, it is a tree if you let it be a tree. Even when I'm in a really urban space, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the things that are growing in walls and out of rooftops and the kind of plants that are finding a way to live in the built environment alongside us, whether they were things that were intended and planted or whether they are things that have made their own way there.
Mosses are a really good way of seeing how polluted a city centre is because they can't survive. And so the ones that we find in urban environments, the particular varieties we find, are the ones that are incredibly hardy. These mosses just find a home here and they make it a greener place to be if you know how to spot them. So what we can see here is how the moss is settled in these cracks, but you've got other plants growing out of it. So that's what moss allows other plants to do. It becomes a kind of seed bed for them because it holds the moisture and creates a kind of nutrient base for them. Other things can then settle on moss and grow where they otherwise couldn't. Mosses reward intimacy because you have to get up close and you start learning about things like patience and attentiveness and detail. And so the whole texture of experience changed for me of the city by becoming more attuned to that scale of things.
For me, gardening is an art. And so obviously when we're outside and we're doing activities with people, it's using those same approaches for people. Find what you like, what are the colours you like, what are the shapes you like, what are the textures that you like. We currently have our art gardener volunteers in at the moment, busy tending and tidying up.
I've learnt about the plants, I've learnt about soils. I'm not afraid of killing plants anymore because I don't kill them. I now know how to look after them. And it's vitally important that you do become part of a community if you haven't got your own garden, really. And to be able to feel that you make a difference somewhere as well.
You know, people volunteer here for many different reasons, but whichever way you look at it, it all comes back to well-being. The well-being of ourselves, the well-being of others, and the well-being of the planet.
This poem is called City of Trees. The poem has two epigraphs, and the first is from Philip Larkin, from his beautiful poem, The Trees. Their greenness is a kind of grief. And the second is from Oscar Wilde, and he wrote, I would give Manchester back to the shepherds. At the town hall valedictory due, the curator's art and parks, her metal tree, and the gallery's diversity get credit, which she abjures. Look is the residue of design, a quote which around the room sparks applause, not for herself or the line, but that it asks for this new order to be acknowledged and sees the city's sprawl as managed. There's a sort of an air in the green lung part of the park which makes the city breathe and which allows me space to think and reminds me that change is possible as well. I hope that what we're doing with Botanical City in the various ways that our research and our writing here at the university thinks about plant life and thinks about green spaces in an urban environment will help other people to make the case for more of it among us.